Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is our morning update. Today we have an article from the Miami Herald, and it's going to go into a little bit more of Luc Brunel and the modeling agency MC2. Now, we all know that Luc Brunel is a very important part of this case. I call him one of the big three. I think, in my personal opinion, it was Luc Brunel, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jeffrey Epstein, who were used by agents of intelligence to run this blackmailing operation. Do you think it's a coincidence that Luc Brunel's one of his favorite places was Tel Aviv? He had a modeling office of MC2 in Tel Aviv. It's the evidence is all there, folks. It's just putting it together at this point, right? We just have to be able to put everything together, and that means we have to follow all the leads we possibly can. So I think this is going to be a very good story. Anything from Julie Brown over in the Miami Herald that has to do with Jeffrey Epstein is usually pretty damn good and pretty informative. So we're going to dive into that this morning. It seems like a pretty long article. Obviously, I have not read it yet. I haven't done that yet. So we're going to read it together, and we're going to see what the hell is what, right? So make sure that you guys are sharing this with your friends, sharing it on your social media, etc., etc. Let's get the word out. Because it's time. It's time to keep the pressure up, right? It's time for us to keep our foot firmly on the gas pedal, slammed all the way down as this story continues to develop. If you would like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. All right, let's hop right into the article this morning, shall we? Headline: Did a Miami-based modeling agency fuel Jeffrey Epstein's machine of abuse? The yellow sign for MC2 model management is still posted in the second floor window overlooking Lincoln Road. It's an echo of the modeling mecca years when South Beach was like walking into a Calvin Klein underwear ad, with head-turning men and women on every corner and photo crews lined up on the sand. The office has been locked for at least 2 years, tenants say, and the parade of aspiring cover girls has ceased. Here, Jeffrey Epstein and Luc Brunel created the boutique firm MC2 years before Epstein's arrest on charges of sex trafficking minors. What better pipeline than a modeling agency that would recruit young girls dreaming of a glamorous career and provide a stream of fresh fawn-like bodies one after the other as if they were strutting down Epstein's personal catwalk? And we've talked about this with Victoria's Secret as well. Him having access to these modeling agencies is one of his ends. This is one of his main MOs. He was very, very, very fond of having access to these young girls at any time. And not only having access to them, but being able to wield great power and exert great, great, great power over them, because he was basically in control of their livelihood. The underage girls from Royal Palm Beach High, shopping malls, and trailer parks enticed to Epstein's waterfront estate to give him massages that turned into sexual assaults, weren't the Palm Beach multimillionaire's only victims. He also had an appetite for models, and Brunel fed that appetite. We know that Brunel sent him 3 young girls, they said about 12, as a birthday present. Who does that? What sort of sick bastard even thinks, yeah, I'm going to send this guy, some 12-year-old girls as a birthday present? I mean, really? None of that's okay. How is this guy still on the run, folks? How is he not caught up? I'll tell you why. He's being protected by the same people that are protecting Ghislaine Maxwell, in my opinion. Brunel launched the careers of famous models for 40 years in Paris, New York, and Miami, placing them on Vogue covers and couture runways. But he shared Epstein's obsession for sex with young women and knew that men who ran the fashion industry could take advantage of the women and girls whose faces sold the clothes, according to court records, sworn depositions, witness testimony, and new interviews by the Miami Herald. Well, we know that's a fact. We know that it's a modeling agency is a breeding ground that's ripe for the picking for these sick bastards. These girls put all their faith into these modeling agencies and think that they're going there for an actual job, but when they show up, they run into a guy like Luc Brunel and Jeffrey Epstein, and then they get their whole entire lives flipped upside down. Why? Why is that okay? Epstein, who financed Brunel's MC2 investment with a $1 million line of credit, died at age 66 in his Manhattan jail cell on August 10th while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. His death, ruled a suicide by hanging, has led prosecutors to look at others in his orbit who could be considered enablers, which would seem to include Brunel, by the way. Ruled a suicide? Allegedly. Let me assure you, this case will continue on against anyone who is complicit with Epstein. Any co-conspirators should not rest easy, Attorney General William Barr said in the aftermath of Epstein's death. Well, that's it, folks. William Barr has spoken. We would all go home. Everybody could stop following the case. We know that the investigators are going to investigate themselves, huh? Look, I'd love to have faith that William Barr was going to do the right thing, but I think it's even bigger than William Barr. This entire thing is bigger than William Barr. The people that are involved are bigger than William Barr. It's just a whole entire insanely complicated situation. The prominent French agent and scouting tsunami, according to his MC2 bio, has gone underground, first in Brazil, one of his favorite hunting grounds for poor, tall 13 and 14-year-olds, and now possibly in Paris, where he has a reputation as a cocaine-snorting playboy who exploited models, accusations he has denied. Yeah, how many times if there's smoke, there's fire, Mr. Brunel. Anybody who's rolling around with Jeffrey Epstein as one of the heads of the three-headed monster, scummy, smarmy, and stupid, then you're definitely somebody that needs to be checked on. And you add all the other evidence of your actions. Yeah, Mr. Brunel, sorry, your denials, they ring hollow, sir. In the fashion capital of the world, he is called La Fantôme, the Ghost. Brunel's whereabouts were also unknown when FBI agents delivered a subpoena seeking his testimony to the MC2 office in Miami in July, agency manager Jeff Fuller said. It's incredible that neither Jean-Luc nor Jeffrey Epstein is in prison, said Zoe Brock, who was 17 when her home or mother agency in New Zealand sent her to Paris in 1991 to work for Brunel. They were made for each other. They were united in their perverse needs. Bam, there you go again. Another bit of evidence. And it's these little blurbs, right? These little nuggets that we have. If they were said on their own, we'd be like, oh, okay, whatever. That's one person saying it. But when you look at them together and you look at them in context, it's very hard to deny what was going on with Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jean-Luc Brunel. When she first met the Frenchman, she said he propositioned her and shoved a mirror lined with cocaine at her, saying, "You know, Zoe, we are going to have sex and have one of these days." Oh boy. He was a vile little garden gnome who forced himself on the girls he was supposed to protect, Brock told the Herald. That's a good way to explain what the guy was like, huh? He looked like a garden gnome, another creepy-looking son of a bitch, another old-ass rich guy who thought it was okay to, just use people however he thought and felt was fit. Meanwhile, in the real world, the rest of us are standing here on top of whatever platform we have, yelling and screaming that this son of a bitch should be buried underneath the jail. To Courtney Powell Sorensen, it was inevitable that Brunel and Epstein, who she never met, would eventually find each other. Epstein had to have his slimy peons, and Brunel was the ideal person to do the job, said Sorensen, 50, who was a 19-year-old model in Paris in the late 80s. She told the Herald Brunel repeatedly demanded sex and touched her inappropriately. When she refused, jobs dried up. Again, that's why these girls are so caught, these models especially. All right, you're going to do what I want you to do, or you're never going to work again. And that's a very, 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 very powerful statement to make from somebody who truly controls the reins. Brunel had access to a network of young women. It was already his proclivity to behave that way. When he connected with Epstein, they realized they could do it together. He is just as guilty, if not more so, than Epstein. He was promoting and feeding the machine of abuse. Again, it all starts to fall into place, right? It all starts to fall into place. Ghislaine Maxwell was the in to high society, brought Jeffrey Epstein into high society, gave him credibility, and then all the while he was working on the inside to bring these politicians and these powerful people into his orbit so that he could set them up for this blackmailing operation, Well, at the same time, Jean-Luc Brunel was doing his job, folks. He was recruiting girls from these modeling agencies. He was bringing them into Jeffrey Epstein's orbit for them to be abused. Among those who knew the inner workings of MC2 was Maritza Vasquez, Brunel's bookkeeper for a decade. In exclusive interviews, Vasquez, who lives in Miami, said the agency housed girls in Miami Beach and Manhattan apartments who never really worked as models, but were instead transported to parties at Epstein's Palm Beach and Manhattan mansions. And we discussed a little bit of that. The building in New York on 66th Street that's owned by Mark Epstein, there's 200 units in it, and MC2 had an office in this building as well. And out of this office, they were running a bunch of apartments that were filled with girls that supposedly never modeled. So again, more context. Unlike most agencies, MC2 had no men's division. Only headshots of women adorned its wall. Brunel ordered Vasquez to cook the books to hide the firm's red numbers, she said. Well, that's nice. That's nice, huh? Not only is he a sexual deviant and sexual abuser, he's cooking the books as well. The only reason Mr. Epstein was involved was because of the girls, I think, because it was not a profitable business, Vasquez told the Herald. Of course that's why he was involved. It was a shell company. It was a front. Just another way for him to get girls, folks. An easier hunting ground for this sick bastard. Brunel began bringing in girls who could not possibly qualify as top working models, said Joey Hunter, former co-president of Ford's Models, who ran Karen Models of America's New York office with Brunel from 95 to 98. He called his partnership with Brunel the worst mistake of my life. He seemed to lower his standards and was in it for the chase and conquest. If I saw a mediocre girl on the street, I wouldn't approach her. She'd have to be fabulous. But Jean-Luc would take that girl, Hunter told the Herald. He was using the pitch, I'm Jean-Luc, the model agent. Come join my agency. But the girl wasn't right for professional work. It was like he was scouting for a separate business. Is it all coming clear for you folks? Everybody in the back, is it coming clear what was going on here? Let's call them what they were. Children. Even the most beautiful are self-conscious and insecure. They don't know who they are by that age, said Irene Marie, founder of the agency at 728 Ocean Drive, the Art Deco building used in the Scarface chainsaw scene that helped reincarnate South Beach in the late 80s. A former model who had fended off aggressive photographers, Marie was brutally honest when coaching her models about the culture of sexual harassment and abuse in the business. She encouraged parents to accompany their daughters to Miami or Paris or Milan. She assigned people to keep an eye on them at night when club owners whisked them through the velvet ropes, and Gianni Versace invited them to parties at his palazzo. Well, that's good. That's what you got to do with these young girls. If they're your employees, you have a responsibility to, at the very least, give them some guidance and make sure they're not being molested and trafficked by people. I mean, at the very goddamn least, have some decency. Epstein's victims say he and the charismatic Brunel were masters at conning impressionable girls into thinking they would mold them into the next Heidi Klum, Kate Moss, or Victoria's Secret angel. Modeling was the bait, said lawyer Gloria Allred, who represents two of Epstein's accusers. They preyed upon the hopes and aspirations of young girls. The modeling world is tough. If someone with connections offers help, that's a big break. Before they know it, these trusting girls are caught in a carefully constructed spider's web. Sex trafficking is the ultimate betrayal. You know, as much as I don't like Gloria Allred, she's right about that. It's definitely a trap for these girls. They're brought in under false pretenses. They're promised the world, and then their world is destroyed. Brunel, who has said through his lawyer in Paris that he continues to deny sex trafficking accusations, is not on the run and would cooperate with investigators. Although his lawyer in Fort Lauderdale, Joe Titone, said, I don't think that will happen, when asked if Brunel would be willing to come to the United States to talk to authorities. Titone said he can't confirm Brunel's whereabouts and got tired of asking him because he was traveling all over the place. Okay, it's obvious he's on the lam. And Brunel is not sitting down with anybody for an interview. The only way Brunel is ever going to be brought to justice is if he's brought to justice. He needs to be brought in. He needs to be arrested. He's definitely one of the three major players in this whole entire Epstein ring. I strongly deny having participated either directly nor indirectly in the actions of Mr. Jeffrey Epstein is being accused of, Brunel said in 2015 in his only public statement. I strongly deny having committed any illicit act or any wrongdoing in the course of my work as a scouter or model agency's manager. Yeah, well, all the different girls have a different story, sir. Fuller, who booked models for an array of clients at MC2, defended Brunel, whom he worked with for 2 decades, first at Karen Models of America in Miami, which became MC2 in 2005. In all those years, I never had a model or any individual complain, report, or make any allegations in any way about improper behavior from Mr. Brunel, Fuller said. Jean-Luc went out of his way to make sure the models were safe and looked after, and he made this a priority. Yeah, wow. Okay, Mr. Fuller. Highly doubt that anyone should be sending their daughters to come work with you. Others who allegedly enabled Epstein's scheme and are potential witnesses or even possible subjects of prosecutors' ongoing probe have also been elusive. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's British socialite ex-girlfriend and pedophile and recruiter of underage girls. Sarah Kellen Vickers, scheduler of Epstein's twice or thrice daily sexual encounters and keeper of the vast database of girls she is accused of helping to groom for sex. Nadia Marcinkova, from the former Yugoslavia, and Adriana Muchinska-Ross, an ex-model from Poland who lives in Miami. Along with Brunel, his retinue flew on Epstein's private plane nicknamed the Lolita Express between his homes in Palm Beach and New York's Upper East Side, his ranch in New Mexico and his apartment in Paris, and his private little St. James Island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where he sought sex with a certain type of victim, 12 to 17 years old, white, non-tattooed, small-breasted, and easily manipulated by his promises of a gilded future. If that doesn't chill you, folks, then I don't know what does. This is a profile of this man and what he's looking for. Little girls. Little girls. In court papers, many have either denied involvement or invoked their Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. None has been charged with any crimes. Oh, except for the 2 guards, right? Except for the 2 low-hanging fruit guards. What made Epstein's activities a crime, resulting in his July 6th arrest, was that he used fraud and coercion, 2 of the key elements of sex trafficking. Lawyer Bradley Edwards, who represents nearly 24 accusers, explained that neither Epstein nor his recruiters, including Brunel, were ever direct about their goal. Epstein never wanted someone who was just a prostitute or an escort because it wasn't just the sex. It was also that he made somebody engage in acts that they never would have engaged in. It was an innocent person. It was a vulnerable person, Edwards said. And that's exactly what they were about. They would lure these girls in with promises of a beautiful future, and then they would abuse them, groom them, and turn them into trafficked victims. MC2, which moved its headquarters to a bayfront tower on Biscayne Boulevard, has steadfastly denied any association with Epstein, yet its name, which no one affiliated with the agency explained, was known to evoke Epstein, a self-styled scientific genius who wanted to populate the world with his DNA, because E equals MC squared, which is the theory of relativity devised by a bona fide genius, Albert Einstein. MC2 was dissolved September 27th. Fuller started a new agency called the Source Models, which is negotiating to buy assets from MC2 like office equipment and email, domain and modeling contracts. He says Brunel has no affiliation. Yeah, this Fuller guy needs to be investigated as well. Sorry, you were involved. You're part of the criminal enterprise. Everybody who was involved and got money from this criminal enterprise needs to be arrested under RICO laws. The French Connection. Son of a high society Parisian real estate executive, Brunel is a short man, dwarfed by his models. He was known for his flamboyant attire, wearing designer clothing by Gucci, Prada, and Dolce & Gabbana, and driving a white Ferrari. He kept reserved tables stocked with champagne and whiskey at popular nightclubs in Paris. His favorite spot was Les Bons Douches, where the party never stopped. Boy, is that fitting. Les Bons Douche. The douche hangs out at the douche. Fitting place for this idiot to be. He became head of the Karen Model Agency in Paris in 1978 and expanded to offices in New York and Miami Beach in 1995. He was a minority partner at Next in the 1990s. He claimed he had an uncanny eye for photogenic 14-year-olds, and that he discovered models Christy Turlington, Jerry Hall, Rebecca Romaine, and Mila Jovovich, although other agents take credit too. He spent years recruiting girls in the former Soviet republics and at schoolyards and volleyball courts and farming towns in the southernmost states of Brazil, home of supermodels Gisele Bündchen and Alessandra Ambrosio, whose fame turned the area into a hotspot for scouts. Brunel tapped into his contacts at mother agencies in Sao Paulo, Brasilia, and Rio de Janeiro, and went back to his roots as rabator, a modeling allusion to the person who beats the bushes during a hunt. He even had helicoptered into a remote Amazon village in 2006. Yeah, well, why not? Easy to get to young girls from third world countries, right? Easy to promise them a whole bunch of dough. Easy to abuse them. Boy, he must have loved it. It must have been like a buffet for this sick bastard over there. Brunel may have seemed an odd match for Epstein, a math whiz from working-class Coney Island who became a mysteriously successful money manager, partial to hoodies and polo shirts he wore only once before throwing them away. He was a clean freak. He did not drink or do drugs. Yet, they developed a symbiotic relationship that dates back 25 years. Flight logs show Brunel flew on Epstein's private jet 25 times between 1998 and 2005. That's less times than Bill Clinton, though, by the way. He visited Epstein in the Palm Beach County Jail in 2008 and 2009 when Epstein was serving a 13-month sentence for soliciting minors for prostitution. When in New York, Brunel lived in Epstein's apartment building at 301 East 66th Street. We talked about that just a little bit earlier in this segment. And that building was filled with Epstein's people, pilots, girls, you name it. Where the model stayed, too. When in Miami Beach, he stayed at his own house on San Marino Island and later at his penthouse condo on West Avenue, but also spent time at Epstein's Palm Beach compound. In the house with erotic photos on the walls, penis and vagina-shaped soaps in the bathrooms, and, on a bookshelf, Slavecraft, Roadmaps to Erotic Servitude, and Training with Miss Abernathy, a workbook for erotic slaves and their owners. I'm sure that was just bought for reading purposes, folks. Come on, Jeffrey Epstein isn't into any of that. Epstein was a great guy, obviously. Just ask this Fuller character. Ask all of his buddies. Ask all of his enablers. Epstein's butler, housekeeper, and driver said they'd seen Brunel cooking in the kitchen, sunning by the pool, where a nude girl might be relaxing in the hot tub or sitting on Epstein's lap, and chatting with Epstein, Maxwell, Kellen, and girls there to give massages, in quotes, to Epstein on the upstairs massage table. We all know what massage meant as well, all right? And it's always a young girl. Why never any professional masseuses? You can go get yourself a professional masseuse. You need a young girl who's 16, 17 to massage you? No, that's not what you're looking for. You're looking to molest these girls. Everybody knew it. Everybody knows it. And yet you got away with it for so long. Epstein explained to me that in his opinion, he needed to have 3 orgasms a day. It was biological, like eating, Johanna Schuberg said in court papers. She was a Palm Beach Atlantic college student recruited by Maxwell to work in Epstein's house. Brunel phoned Epstein regularly. 2 2005 handwritten message pad notes taken by Epstein's assistants that police found in Epstein's trash provide a snapshot of their dialogue. In the first, Brunel relayed that he has a teacher for you to teach you how to speak Russian. She is 2 by 8 years old, not blonde, lessons are free, and you can have first today if you call. It's like a paid advertisement for sex trafficking. It's chilling to read that, how casual and how crass it is. And that alone should be enough to arrest this man. Apparently referring to a 16-year-old. In the other, marked by the message taker as from Brunel, he boasted that, he just did a good one, 18 years, she spoke to me and said, I love Jeffrey. They had one compulsion in common, according to those who knew them, coercing young women into sex. Again, folks, it all goes back to the whole entire blackmail thing. Now, they all started off they were all probably just sick bastards, right? But intelligence agencies are good at figuring out who's good at what and who will be an asset where. And they basically knew that they could use these people to set up this whole entire honey trap operation, and it worked like nobody ever thought it would. It was one of the most successful honey traps that they've ever put in place. And that's why he got off the first time, so he could keep things going. Virginia Roberts, who was recruited by Maxwell when she was 16 and stayed with Epstein until she was 19, said that Epstein and Brunel made promises to a lot of young foreign girls, primarily from South America and Eastern Europe. Easy to do that, right? When girls are coming from disaffected places, places that are poor or war-torn, it's easy to manipulate them to do what you want them to do. It's easy to get into their heads. It's easy to tell them things are going to be okay, when in reality you know you're about to just use them and destroy their lives. The modeling agency was the perfect vehicle for Epstein to get more victims, said Roberts, who claims that she was also forced to have sex many times with Brunel. Jean-Luc was Jeffrey's main supplier of girls from other countries. There you go, from Virginia Roberts as well. Now, we've had 3 or 4 different people in this article alone tell us that Jean-Luc was the supplier of girls. So we see what his relationship was in the operation. If we just keep everything going and we keep putting the evidence together, the big picture does emerge, folks. He once sent Jeffrey 3 12-year-olds as a birthday present. I was sick about that, and Jeffrey just said, don't worry, their parents would have been paid very well. Oh, man. It's so disheartening and so disturbing to read stuff like that. 12-year-old girls, huh? And their parents were paid very well. Again, the rich taking advantage of the rest of us and using their money as a vehicle for their sick and disturbed ideas of preying on people. Roberts had made these allegations in court declarations as well as in interviews. Brunel, she said, had a dark side and could be quick to lose his temper. But, she said, he could also come across as charming. He had no trouble walking up to a girl, telling her she was beautiful and promising to hire her as a model. He would obtain temporary work visas for overseas girls, bring them to America on false promises, use them for sex, then send them home at the end of their visas, Roberts said. Most of them didn't speak any English, and Jeffrey loved that. He always said, I don't even have to speak to them. He told them what to do through body language. So he thought so little of these girls that he didn't even care if they spoke the language. All he wanted to do was use them, and he would direct them via body language to do it. Wow. Roberts was present during some photo shoots set up by Brunel on Epstein's Island. The girls were instructed to disrobe and participate in sex with Brunel and with each other. Maxwell, who considers herself a skilled photographer, often took pictures, Roberts said. They would take nude pictures on the beach. They were told it was like a test to see how they looked, Roberts said. Epstein occasionally posed as a scout starting in the 1990s for Victoria's Secret, the retail lingerie chain owned by billionaire Les Wexner, CEO of L Brands, who was for a long time Epstein's only known client. Epstein lured women on the pretense that he could get them jobs as catalog models or angels in Victoria's Secret fashion shows. The brand, in decline because of the Epstein scandal, Me Too movement, and backlash against its image, canceled its famous show this year. When Italian model Elisabetta Tai was invited to Epstein's Manhattan mansion in 2004, she thought she was interviewing with a Victoria's Secret consultant, she told the New York Post. Again, we've seen this. Epstein used his ties with Victoria's Secret to bring these girls in on the pretense that he could get them work. And when they showed up, he would abuse them, and that would be the end of it. And then according to Wexner and L Brands and Victoria's Secret, Epstein was never an employee of them. Meanwhile, he had complete control of every bit of Wexner's finances. She barely noticed the massage table in his office. She said she was confused when Epstein got up from his desk, stripped naked, asked her for a massage, and handed her a vibrator. Horrified, she threw the vibrator at Epstein's head and ran out of the room. As she searched for the front door, she said she was confronted by a woman she believed was Maxwell, who yelled after her, "You can't leave. Mr. Epstein's friends with Bill Clinton." Oh, that's nice. So, using Bill Clinton's name to basically abuse these women. Another, just like he did with Prince Andrew, huh? Using his ties to high society to intimidate these girls. That is what you call enabling, my friends. Alicia Arden had hopes of landing a Victoria's Secret contract when Epstein's secretary told her to meet him during his trip to Los Angeles at a Santa Monica hotel. Warily, she did. After a few questions, he asked her to remove her blouse. Then he grabbed her buttocks from behind, saying, "Let me manhandle you." Arden wrestled free and fled, according to the 1997 police report. An officer filled in the box next to weapon. Hands. Epstein featured as Cosmopolitan's July 1980 Bachelor of the Month, smirking and seeking a cute Texas girl, dated models, including former Miss Sweden Eva Anderson, who is now married to wealthy hedge fund manager Glenn Dubin. The couple has been implicated in court filings as being involved with Epstein's sex trafficking, allegations they have publicly denied. Brunel married and divorced Swedish model Helen Hagberg and American model Roberta Churko, 25 years younger and several inches taller. Epstein enjoyed hanging out backstage at beauty pageants with Donald Trump, former model said. He admired Trump's T-Models agency, which represented Slovenian model and future First Lady Melania Noss, and wanted MC2 to be just like it, Vasquez said. He told her at MC2's opening party. Epstein may have met Brunel at a New York Fashion Week event, agents said. The pair tried to create a new agency with elite model management before they founded MC2. On Brunel's recommendation in 2001, Epstein bought an $8 million Paris apartment at 22 Avenue Foch, blocks from Brunel's ornately decorated flat on Avenue Hoc in an upscale 16th arrondissement, or administrative district, near the Arc de Triomphe. On trips to Paris, Epstein was always accompanied by agents fameuses, and his guests included Prince Andrew, Bill Gates, Steve Bannon, and other crowned heads, diplomats, businessmen, and politicians. Epstein's Paris butler for 18 years told Radio France in October. While in Paris, Epstein liked to swim at the Ritz Hotel and escort groups of young girls to the cinema, where they would take turns sitting on his lap. God. They often left before the movies ended, according to neighbors, and the butler, who was still getting paid by the 1953 trust, Epstein's birth year, that controls Epstein's $577 million fortune, the butler's wife told France Info. Brunel hosted dinners for wealthy businessmen at his sumptuous apartment, and his models were required to attend. 2 or 3 models bunked in the maids' quarters where they told each new roommate about the peephole from the kitchen into the tiny bathroom they shared, Brock said. "We were kids who didn't speak the language, far from home, and totally at the mercy of a man in a position of authority and trust who should have been taking care of us," Brock said. This alone should put Brunel in prison. This alone should put Brunel in prison. Never mind all the other stuff. Where is this man? When 18-year-old Thaiza Hoosman arrived from the Netherlands in 1991, the extra room was so full, so Brunel invited her to sleep in his room. She slept on the floor of the model's room instead. One morning, she said she woke up in his bed woozy, her bruised thighs covered by an unfamiliar kimono. She is certain Brunel spiked her drink with a blackout drug and raped her, she told French publication Mediapart. Oh my Lord, these poor girls that were abused by these sick bastards. It's so depressing. It makes me feel so dirty even just reading it. Brunel's flock was expected to party with him and his pals late into the night, Brock said. "We were the models who went to the front of the line, showed no ID, and got free drinks and drugs because the more of us in a club, the more men would show up and pay for overpriced alcohol," she said. Same story in Miami, New York, L.A., Milan, and definitely in Las Vegas. Definitely happening here in Las Vegas on a regular basis. The overpaid alcohol and the girls and... Yikes. Brunel persisted in harassing her, Brock said. She resisted, but worried I would offend him and he would either attack me or kill my career. Soon she was relocated to a scruffy apartment with 5 other models in the Pagali red light district. She got no work in Paris, so Brock moved onto an agency in Italy, where she later found out Brunel spread rumors that she had a drug problem. Yeah, a drug problem. You put the drug in her drink and raped her. That's her drug problem, you sick bastard. In 1988, expose on 60 Minutes called American Girls in Paris, models described the deal with the devil they were expected to make with unethical agents. Sleep with them, or their fleeting chance at a career would be sabotaged as they were blackballed by clients. Everybody knew this was going on, folks. We all knew what young actresses were going through as well, and nobody stood up and said anything. Now all of a sudden, people are starting to take notice. Now all of a sudden, people are aware. And these people, like this bastard, Jean-Luc Brunel, he has nowhere to hide at this point. If he's seen anywhere, he's in big trouble. The young models told the first Me Too story 30 years before its time, said Craig Pies, a producer of the segment. Brunel's friend Claude Haddad liked to climb into bed with girls, they recounted to Diane Sawyer. When Sawyer asked him how many teenagers he had slept with, he stammered, "What do you mean by teenage? 16? Almost never." In the same segment, Brunel was depicted as a heavy cocaine user foisting drugs on his models or slipping pills into their drinks. Modeling magnate Eileen Ford, visibly embarrassed, essentially disowned her Paris agent on primetime TV. She, like other agency owners, had sent models to Brunel for prestigious assignments in Paris, in the Paris market. Man, I don't buy that. Everybody knew what was going on, and the money talked. So the money was so important that you would rather send these girls and make that money, and you don't give a shit what happens to them. Shari Bolt Sutherland, a 17-year-old cheerleader from West Palm Beach, was debating whether to denounce Brunel on 60 Minutes when she had a pre-dawn spiritual revelation. God told her to go on camera. She is now co-pastor with her husband at Elevate Miami Church. Sutherland, who departed Brunel's apartment and continued her career in Germany, told Pies recently that Brunel and that pig-petty Epstein deserved each other, and she's glad I spoke for what was right for the greater whole over a silly modeling career. Good for her. Good for her. The modeling world is not glamorous at all, Pies told the Herald. Brunel was one of many who treated women as currency. He had a black reputation, yet nothing he did was regarded as a crime. Like Epstein, he was doing it in plain sight, but the culture of Omerta kept it quiet. Those two could have been Siamese twins. Their lives revolved around the pursuit of young girls every night, or in Epstein's case, 3 times a day. Yeah, their pursuits were much bigger, though. You got to look at the bigger picture here, folks. It wasn't just that they were sexual predators. They certainly were that. But it was also they were working for intelligence in this blackmail scam. In Michael Gross' 1995 book, Model, The Ugly Business of Beautiful Women, Agent Jerome Boniver, who died in 2009, said Brunel was a danger who liked silent rape. It excites him. Elite agency chief John Casablancas, who had his own scandals, said he despises Brunel for the way he's cheapened the business. You get laid tonight with a model. Is that a crime, Brunel told Gross? I'm no saint. In the 2002 book, Bad and Beautiful, Inside the Deadly and Dazzling World of Supermodels, author Ian Halpern wrote about Brunel in his Model Agents, Princes or Pimps chapter, describing him as notorious for procuring girls for wealthy men as dean of the model dating beat. And that's the thing, folks. It's commonplace for these guys, all right? It's commonplace for these rich people to get girls procured for them by these people, these procurers, these basically pimps, all right? And it's common. And they say, they talk about these rich people, and well, that's what they do. That's how they roll. Brunel's name surfaced again in 2002 when his one-time protege, elite supermodel Karen Mulder, gave an explosive account to French media of how she and other models had been abused by men in the fashion industry and their cohorts in business, entertainment, government, and royalty, with French police complicit. Again, nobody was protecting these girls. Nobody cares. Everybody was all in on it. It was a big pat on the back. She tried to commit suicide and was found on her apartment floor by boyfriend Jean-Yves Lafleur and Rabateur for Brunel. She was hospitalized for 5 months. Brock believed Mulder. 5 years after escaping Brunel, she was accosted by a naked Harvey Weinstein in a hotel room at the Cannes Film Festival, and met Trump when she and 30 other models working in Miami Beach were paid to attend a party at Mar-a-Lago. She characterized the latter as a disgusting encounter. Brock was part of the group that reached a tentative $25 million settlement last week with Weinstein and his bankrupt film studio. Epstein's jet was often filled with young women. The incomplete passenger logs list models Aline Weber, Juliana Barboza, and Leticia and Michelle Berkauer from Brazil, Nina Kaida from Ivory Coast, Zinta Brakis from Los Angeles, Crystal Wash and Nadia Borlin from New York, and Svetlana Graznova from Lithuania. Though not a frequent flyer, Naomi Campbell flew to Epstein's Island, where he hosted parties for Victoria's Secret models. Brunel and Epstein traveled to an MC2-sponsored New Generation runway show in Ecuador in 2006, where young teens from 47 countries walked with an elegance years more mature than their actual ages, or just had that elusive, exclusive it factor, gushed a Models.com commentator, who also noted, bon vivant extraordinaire, Brunel hugging local celebrities. Oh, God, the aggrandizement of all these people and the acting like they were cool or they were special because they ran some modeling agencies, it just disgusts me. The girls heard the fairy tale story of supermodel Natalia Vodanova, who was discovered at age 15, dirt poor, selling fruit by a vodka factory in Gorky, Russia. The winner of an MC2 contract was baby-faced Ginta Lipina of Latvia, a 14-year-old with frosted glass skin who has since walked in all the premier designers' shows. During the 2004 MC2 show, won by Weber, Vasquez said she heard from an MC2 scout that Brunel was in his hotel room with one of the 14-year-old contestants. Brunel occasionally confided in Vasquez that he had desire for young girls, but she has no proof that he ever acted on it. You know, as a mother, I always told him that they were underage girls, Vasquez said, and he was saying, "Oh, I'm the father." Oh, this guy's so gross. He needs to be arrested. This man needs to be arrested right now, folks. Vasquez, who named Brunel godfather of her oldest son, said he could be sweet and generous. Fuller said Brunel took Weber to Paris on Epstein's plane and paid for treatment of a skin condition. Brunel's sister took care of Weber at her house for 2 months. The girls loved him because he took them to the dermatologist to get their nails done. He gave them spending money. He cared about them. I never saw him treating them badly. Yeah, okay. He was using that money to facilitate his abuse. All right? That was the rope in. That was what kept them around. That was the money that sucked them in. And once they were sucked in, there's nothing in the world, not enough money in the world that he could give them to make up for the abuse he was perpetrating on them. Brunel had an unlikable streak, Vasquez said. He ripped off models, overcharged them for rent, and didn't pay mother agencies the fees they were owed. She said Brunel arranged for a Brazilian agency to fly high-end hookers to Epstein's house for a party. Epstein thought they were models. Sure he did. It's unfortunate Jean-Luc was involved with Mr. Epstein, but Jeffrey had helped him when he was in need over the years, and this was his way of paying him back, she said. That's chilling. That is absolutely chilling. Jean-Luc did take girls to Mr. Epstein's house, but he brought them back, too. Even if it's all true, nobody put a gun to the girls' heads. They did what they wanted to do. It's just the mentality of rich older men, and if they are surrounded by girls, they feel like a superstar. And there you have it, folks. That is what we call enabling. That is what we call making excuses for these sick bastards. And this Vasquez lady is just doing it because she was being taken care of by them. So she's basically suffering from Stockholm syndrome herself, obviously. Either that or she's just a sick bastard. Anyone who excuses the behavior of these men is absolutely, positively brain dead, in my opinion. She said the girls were left mostly unsupervised by Brunel, who was constantly on the road, so she took them under her wing, warning them to refuse clients who pressured them to do things that made them uncomfortable. When Barbosa, then 14, got kicked out of a nightclub, Vasquez brought her to her home for a few weeks. "Don't take off your clothes, unwrap your brain, it's what I told them," she said. These girls would go crazy and start smoking and drinking. The ones who didn't get jobs would go to the beach and do nothing or find trouble. Vasquez was fired from MC2 in 2006 and convicted of embezzling money from the firm. She was placed on probation. Yep, she was definitely involved. Sorry. The Epstein headlines stemming from his prostitution case scared away clients, including 9 retail chains. Brunel and MC2 sued Epstein in 2015 for damages resulting from notoriety and bad publicity, and false stories that linked him to Epstein and caused a tremendous loss of business. Despite Epstein's original $1 million line of bank credit, the firm was worthless. Brunel, emotionally destroyed, attached a photo of his Prozac prescription to the suit, which was dismissed. Of course, I bet it was dismissed. This guy is so sick and so depraved that he needs to be thrown underneath the prison, or maybe attached to one of those rockets getting sent to space and launched into space. "The only time I spoke to Epstein was when we filed the lawsuit," Titone said. He was a little miffed about it because he had been friends with Brunel for 20 years and said he helped him out in many ways. He also sued a website that posted links to MC2 as the most popular grown-up girl escort service in Florida. Brunel said he was not a pimp, and the damage to his reputation had cost him a significant loss of revenue. Brunel came under fire in 2016 class action suit by 9 models accusing MC2 and other top firms of financial fraud. One Miami-based model, Marcel Almonte, said that in 2005, MC2 offered her a spot in a model apartment for $1,850 per month, crammed in with 8 other girls, some sleeping on the floor. At that rate, MC2 was pocketing $16,650 compared to the $2,900 rent charge for other 2-bedroom apartments in the same building. And mind you, the building was owned by Epstein's brother, so this money was all just getting recycled back. The money they'd give these girls, they'd end up taking back through this rent. It was basically a servant. They were basically there to serve Epstein, anything that he wanted. The women were required to serve wealthy men at model dinners. They were paid in leftover food, which they often couldn't eat because they were on strict diets. They were pressured to take runway jobs for trade, free clothes that didn't necessarily fit. They weren't paid on time, and agencies subtracted large percentages. If they were like good girls that can make money, they were living in an expensive place. If they were like regular girls, they were living in shitty places, Vasquez said of the apartments where Brunel housed them. Brunel was last seen in public the night before Epstein was arrested on July 6th at his Teterboro apartment in New Jersey upon his return, arrested July 6th at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey upon his return from a 3-week stay in Paris. Brunel, dressed in white, partied at the Paris Country Club annual Soirée Blanche. Since then, 3 women in France have filed complaints against Brunel. Innocence en Danger, a French advocacy group, had submitted letters from victims and campaigned for French investigators to pursue cases against Epstein and Brunel and improve the nation's poor track record for prosecuting alleged sex offenders like Rosemary's Baby, director Roman Polanski, a fugitive from justice since 1978, after he was accused of drugging and raping a 13-year-old girl in California. It took French police 7 weeks to search Epstein's house after he was arrested. Well, they're still ahead of American police, who haven't raided the Zorro Ranch yet. Oh, man. A police source told Mediapart on Thursday that an investigation of L'Affaire Epstein is proceeding slowly, but that they have a body of clues that Epstein and Brunel are very linked to each other and have the same type of appetites. Police hope to interview Brunel by the end of the year. Marlene Schiappa, France's Minister of Equality, has proposed turning Epstein's spacious apartment into a shelter for trafficked children. I can get on board with that. That's a good idea, actually. Let's do it. Turn it into an apartment for trafficked children and abused women. I think that is a great idea. All right, folks, so that is our article for this morning. That is our morning update. That is from the Miami Herald and Julie Brown, and that gives us a little bit more information on Jean-Luc Brunel, a real in-depth dive. And it's disturbing to think that this man was active for so long doing what he was doing, to think that he was accepted in some of these circles that he was accepted in, and to think that these people got away with bringing these young girls from these war-torn countries to be abused even more here in America makes my spine tingle. It makes me so disgusted. It makes me so mad. Coming to America, you should be coming here for a better life. That should be what the goal of coming to America is. And it's unfortunate that people like Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jean-Luc Brunel are such disgusting animals that they have no regard for human life whatsoever. Humans are just pieces on a chessboard to them, and they'll move them however they want and with no regard for anything but their own personal gain. That party's over in 2020, folks. We're turning predators into prey in the year 2020. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. And if you would like to support the show, you can click on the GoFundMe link in the description box and help keep producing all of this content. So far, we're doing pretty good in the GoFundMe, almost halfway to where we want to be. And that money's already being put to good use, folks. We're going to Santa Fe the beginning of the year, like I've talked about. Already have that in motion. That's locked in. That's definitely happening. And, hopefully, if everything is locked in and right, we'll be going to New York as well for some of these trials. So big things are on the horizon, and especially with the help of the listeners out there, forget it. We can continue to create a large amount of content. I mean, 3-4 episodes a day sometimes. So if you guys want that content and you want me to keep producing it, shoot me an email and let me know, and I'll produce even more content, because I got to tell you, this story is there's so many layers to it that if we don't just scour the information and put everything together, then there is no way we will ever have the big picture of what is going on. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoy your Friday, and I hope everybody's weekend is getting ready to kick off in the proper manner. And I hope that everybody has a safe night tonight. If you're going out, drinking, partying, whatever it is, make sure you're getting a ride home and nobody's driving drunk. And most importantly, remember, folks, to share this with your friends, because this story has to get out there. It has to be out there. I'll talk to everybody later on for the evolution segment and the daily drop.